This video I'm introducing Robert Nozick's Anarchy State Utopia. I'm having you guys read a chapter where he talks about taxation among uh, a few other things that I think I'm going to describe a bit. So I just reread this reading and it's pretty long. So I actually went through and sort of underlined or indicated the parts that I think are the most important. So those will be the parts that I think are most important to read, uh, and you'll see there. Maybe I can even show you. Yeah, well, you'll see on the version I uploaded. I think it's pretty clear which parts I want you to read. So this is a difficult reading. So I think that I'm actually going to just say a little bit about what he's actually doing here. So Nozick's going to make the point that imagine that we are thinking about the best way to distribute resources across people in society. Okay, so you might think that we should have something like, not too much inequality across people. There might be some fair distribution. You might think that we should give people who have contributed more, relatively more resources. You might think that we should give people that have more needs more resources or something like that. So Nozick's going to call that sort of distribution either a pattern distribution or an end state distribution. It's where we care about what people end up getting. Okay. He's going to talk about a different way of thinking about the just way of distributing goods across people, which would be something where it's just the way that people got things. Okay, so it's not about how much people end up getting, it's about how they got it. Okay, so basically you're going to think about how people originally acquire goods and then also how people transfer goods between each other. So it might be something like, if I do some work for you, I might do that because you're giving me something in return. Maybe you're giving me some goods in return, so I'll provide some labor to you. Okay, so that sort of transaction where you give me something in return for a service that I provided, that's sort of a just way of changing the distribution of goods across people. Okay, and so that's kind of it. So in this reading, Nozick's going to explain this idea that that it's going to be very hard to maintain any sort of end state distribution because I don't want to give away the best parts of the reading, but he's going to say things like, suppose that we all go and watch somebody do a performance, and each of us buys a ticket, and the person who's giving the performance gets the revenue. Each of us is better off, but now we've really screwed up this distribution of goods or of money, if you like, because now the person who's giving the performance has more money than all the rest of us who bought a ticket. See what I mean? So it's like it's going to be very difficult to maintain any sort of distribution that we would like to have. Okay. So anyway, he makes that point, and then this is in our unit about taxes. Why am I including it? Because Nozick's going to talk about taxes. He's going to talk about taxes and why they're akin to stealing. Again, I don't want to give too much away because it's really cool the way that he writes about it. But he writes in this chapter about how there's no real difference between me paying 40% income taxes and someone saying that I have to work for them for, what is that, 18 hours a week. So essentially 18 of the hours a week that I'm working for someone else. I'm working for the government, or I'm working for society. In a sense, it's sort of like forced labor. Okay, so that's an interesting point that Nozick makes here. And then finally, the very last thing that he talks about is how you can actually acquire something. So, we talked about how it could be just for me to, if I own something, to transfer it to someone else. But how did, the first person end up owning something? How do you get something from nature and gain a property right over it? So he talks about that as well. So, that's a few of the ideas he talks about. Again, it's a somewhat difficult reading. I think you can see that it's 18 pages, but the pages are split, so it's actually 36 pages, and I've probably highlighted about half of it. So I think your reading will be around 20 pages. But yeah, so please do take a look. It's the book Anarchy, State, Utopia. I think it's a very provocative book, the whole thing. This chapter is maybe the most provocative chapter, actually. At least two of the three famous examples from this book are in this chapter. And then the other one is this experience machine, which I've put on as an optional reading. Not because it's super related to what we're going to talk about, but just because I think it's a really interesting thought experiment. So, I just wanted to mention the other thing. Yeah, so this book is considered like one of the strong theoretical justifications for libertarianism. So you guys are all going to a business school. I know there's a lot of people who are sympathetic to libertarianism at Copenhagen Business School. So this is considered, I think, by many people to be maybe the strongest defense of libertarianism, this book. So yeah, I look forward to talking to you all about it in class next week.